Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patrick Igwe, and I am a representative from Passion Incubator. I want to thank everyone for joining this session with Felix Darko, who is the startup scout at Katapult VC. So we would be having a 5 minute interval to allow others who have registered to be in this session join us. So I just plead for a 5 minutes interval for others to join. Thank you and enjoy. So without further ado, I would like to bring Mr. who is the head tech ecosystem venture sourcing at FCMB to give us a little bit of an introduction before we bring in Felix Darko, who apparently we have waited for and would love to hear him speak. So Mr. Abiodun, it's over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Robin. I'm sorry, Patrick. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. It's such a pleasure to have you all on this call. We've been looking forward to hearing from Felix and to share of his experience in the VC world and to guide our community of startups and entrepreneurs in the best way that they should approach venture capital investment, especially at this time where there's so much uncertainty in the market and there's all manner of predictions going on. I think this is just the right fit for the current ecosystem that we find ourselves when it comes to venture capital. I remember just a few days ago, one of the most popular accelerator released some set of rules that kind of shook the ecosystem a bit. And I'm referring to YC, where they predicted that certain things would begin to happen. And they were not encouraging things, within the venture capital space. So it's really a pleasure to have, this series. I'll just finally quickly speak about our work at FCMB and how we are supporting startups. It may be news or may not be news to some of you that at FCMB, we're not just a bank, we're a group. And within the group, are various businesses that are very enthusiastic about partnering with the startup ecosystem, such as the Trustee Limited, that has partnered with, a recent startup, has recently partnered with a startup. There is also the Old Co that is also attuned and interested in, even investing, not only partnering, even investing in some of these businesses. So if you're on this call today and you're wondering why FCMB is sponsoring conversation around venture capital firm, we're not just a bank. We actually play in this space also. And please feel free after the call or any other time to chat myself. I'll leave my details in the comment section to chat me or send me an email, pitch your idea to us, and we're very glad to invite you over for a chat, etc. So that being said, we look forward to a very good time with you, Felix. Please take us on a ride. Thank you very much.
Okay, so at this juncture, I will just give a little bit of an introduction of who Felix is, right? So I'm pretty sure we are all interested in wanting to know who Felix is. So Felix apparently is an experienced product strategist. So you can bet that we are in good hands to actually hear a little bit of insight on how to strategize as a product or as a startup building a product. So Felix also has founded his own tech company, which was founded in 2013 in the e-commerce and logistics space. And since then, Felix has guided startups up to 100 over in Africa, right? Currently has also helped a lot of startups achieve product market fit and garner over 2.5 million in funding, right? So at this point, I really just want to introduce Felix, bring Felix on. I know Felix is on the call. Felix, over to you.
All right. Hello, everyone. I hope you can see me and hear me.
Yes, we can, Felix.
Fantastic. All right. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much to Passion and to FCMB for hosting me. It's a real pleasure to be here. Yeah, and thank you also for the kind words and the good introduction. So yes, my name is Felix Darko. I'm a number of things. On one end, I am scouting for startups for Katapult VC and a number of other VCs, basically helping them to find exciting and interesting startups to invest in. At the same time, I'm also a CTO at Jamjar, which is an event tech company in Ghana. And as most of us millennials in this day and age, there's a whole number of other things that we're working on. But I'm here today to speak to you about VC. So I actually will be sort of taking this from actually the perspective of the entrepreneur. I think a lot of times we hear people from VC talk about VC, but they themselves have never been in the shoes of an entrepreneur. And I think it's very important to understand how that interplay works when you're trying to look for investment as an entrepreneur. So I actually started my first business in 2013. It was an e-commerce and logistics startups. Essentially, we were doing grocery delivery, grocery ordering and delivery. The business started off doing fairly well. We had a partner in Food Lovers, which is a South African grocery chain that was moving to Ghana. And so it was very exciting for us, and we started the business with a lot of high hopes. But then, unfortunately, after about a year or so, our partner decided that they were not going to move into the market anymore, which basically broke our business model. And we sort of over-relied on that partnership to facilitate the existence of our business. And so once they left, the sort of business case left, and we were left scrambling, trying to find the best ways to keep the business afloat. And we tried for a while, but then we ultimately realized that the unit economics didn't make sense anymore, and we had to let go of the business. Now, if at that time we had VC backing, it probably would have looked a lot differently. But at the time, I was a lot younger and a lot less knowledgeable, shall we say, about the ecosystem in the space. And so it wasn't even really an option for us. And I think that kind of highlights one of the first major issues with sort of the investment landscape right now in Africa, is that most entrepreneurs just don't know where to find the capital. They know that, yes, we need money to grow and scale our business, but we have no idea where to even start looking. And then the second problem there is, then if you do know where to find investment, how do you get it? How do you make your business investment ready? How do you court the right investors? So it's a bit loud here. I don't know, everybody wants to buy a fancy motorcycle nowadays. But essentially, it's one, the knowledge and understanding of the investment landscape, but secondly, it's being able to make your business investment ready. Now, investment readiness in itself also has two sides. One is knowing which investment is right for you and knowing how you're going to leverage that investment to grow your business. Because a lot of people will get money or get investment, and then their business will fail. I mean, we've seen this with countless businesses, and we've seen one of the most notable ones being WeWork, that had hundreds of millions of dollars at their disposal and still managed to fail. Poor management, misuse of funds, so on and so forth. Now, on the other end, it's the internal processes and structure of your business that will allow you to be investment ready. So do you have your financials on point? Are you tracking all the right metrics? Do you have corporate governance structures in place? Do you, especially nowadays where there's a whole new space of impact investing that is becoming very popular. So of course, the traditional VC space is still there, and there's still a lot of investors that are just looking for big businesses that they can make a return on. But there's now a lot more VCs, also Katapult being one of them, that are looking for companies that are actually creating an impact in the spaces that they operate in, whether it's the climate, whether it's women and children, whether it's economic and financial sustainability. And so all these things come together to create almost like a new space that people need to become familiar with. And so I think it's supremely important for entrepreneurs to take the time to really understand the investment landscape, understand what kinds of investments are out there, whether you're going for equity investments, whether you're going for debt, and if you're doing equity, are you doing a SAFE, is it a convertible note, and so on and so forth, right? And that very much depends on where your business is, how you plan to use the money, and also ultimately what kind of investor it is that you're trying to raise money from. Now, there's a few tips and tricks basically to get you to that point. Like I mentioned already, you definitely need to have your books in place. So you're tracking all your expenses and all your cash flow, and everything is hopefully also digital, right? So I know it might be a bit laughable to think about it now, but there's still a lot of businesses that track their financials with pen and paper, and then try and carry that over into some sort of Excel sheet or to QuickBooks or whatever it might be. But that's one of the most important things. Secondly is corporate governance, right? To make sure that you have all the right structures in place, from leadership all the way down to your most quote unquote lowly employee, to make sure that you have HR policies in place, to make sure that even the allocation of shares and equity between founders makes sense, and it's all in writing. You have all the paperwork and agreements to ratify all that is very, very important, right? But that's honestly the basic side of it. That's the foundation, right? Any self-respecting investor will expect you to have all these things in place, right? And so that just gets you to the starting line. Then you need to understand how to sell your business, right? Your business is what it is. Some businesses are not ready for investment based on where they are with traction, what market that they're playing in, maybe even the amount of revenue they're making. There's some businesses that don't need investments. And it's not even that they're not ready for it. They don't need it. You're making enough money from the business itself that you can put back into the business. And so some investors will just pass on the investment, not because you're not an attractive business, but because they don't think that their money will create an impact with you, right? Now, that actually creates a situation where you need to be very cautious of certain predatory investors that will force their money on you, even though you might not need it, right? Just so they can get a piece of the pie. And so you need to be sort of very honest with yourself and honest with your team, because getting money, somebody comes and says, we're going to invest $1 million in your business. That instantly gets your heart beating. You get very excited. But you need to be very honest with yourself and have a sort of a critical look inward on whether or not that investment will actually do what it needs to do, whether that investment is necessary, and what strings come attached with that investment. Some investors are very hands-off, whereas others become a lot more involved in your business. Some want board seats, and some might try and start dictating how you should run your business, where you should be doing business, how you should evolve your product, what customers you should be going after, ultimately for their own reasons and not because they have your best interests at heart. So that's also definitely something to keep very center of mind when you are shopping for investment. Now, beyond, like I was saying, beyond having your books and all your processes and policies in place, it's about selling your business. So if you have done sort of the analysis of your business and you understand that, or you realize that, yes, you do need investment and you know the kind of investment that you need, then it's about how do I best package and sell my business so that it is attractive to investors. And now I don't mean lying, right? Because there's a fine line there. There's embellishment, there's positioning, and then there's lying. You definitely don't want to lie about what your business is doing. You don't want to give inaccurate or false numbers, but you want to be able to point to the aspects of the business that will convert somebody into an investor. Sometimes it's purely just your revenue numbers, and that is what your business is. Hey, we're doing a whole lot of sales that can get some people excited. Again, sometimes it's impact. 80% of our customers are women. That will get some investors excited. So it very much depends on your audience. And so what I would advise for any founder on the call is you need to have several different versions of your pitch deck. One that's for impact investors, one that is for just number-minded investors, and so on and so forth. In that way, you'll be able to best position your business to sort of capture the right investors or capture the investors that you're looking for. Another thing to note here is that different stage investments have different priorities, right? So if you're a very early stage company, the investors are looking at the team, right? So it's the idea, the business, the numbers come secondary to the team, because we all know that most businesses fail anyway, right? And so you're not backing the idea, you're backing the people behind it and whether or not you believe that they are capable of making it work. And so if you know that you're an early stage company, that you should be putting your team front and center, and you should be able to sell the experience that you have. You should have deep industry knowledge in the space that you're working in. You should be able to share some key insights, especially insights that maybe are not common knowledge, and that you're able to pull on saying, given that I've worked in this space for 5 years, for 10 years, I have noticed this very peculiar thing about the industry, and I am using that knowledge of the industry to be able to actually create the best product or create the best service. And those are things that actually get investors very excited. They're like, oh my God, wow, this guy really knows what he's talking about. Let me put money behind it. Now, as you get to the later stages, then investors are looking more at your numbers, right? Then it's, okay, let's break it out. So first in the sort of medium space, let's say when you're about seed stage, and we're talking about the new age of seed stage now that companies are raising millions, not tens of millions. Yes. Hello? Okay, maybe that was not meant for me. Where was I? Yes, now the companies are raising tens of millions of dollars at seed stage. You also need to be careful about how you position the stage of your company when you're raising, and you don't get too ahead of yourself. You might think, oh yeah, this is seed, we're at seed, even though you might be better served to position yourself as pre-seed so you can still go on to raise a much larger seed round. But the point I'm making is that at sort of pre-seed level, people are really looking at the team. At the seed stage, now they're looking more at the idea. Does your idea hold water? Does it make business sense? Do you have the right understanding of the problem space? Do you have a good problem solution fit and ultimately product market fit? And these two things are distinct, right? When you're building a business first, and I think with the new sort of new age of design thinking and approaching it from a problem centered approach, first you identify a problem, and the hope is that you have a solution that solves that problem. Some people put the cart before the horse and design something first and then go out into the world looking for a problem that their solution will solve. It's not advisable, but it works. I mean, a lot of people have built products without really a real business case until they found one. However, whichever one comes first, you need to be sure that the problem that you are trying to solve is actually being solved by your solution. And then you need to then find product market fit, right? So, because at the end of the day, the market doesn't really care about how good your solution is. It cares about whether people are willing to pay money for it. And we've seen a lot of really good solutions that just never make it because people just don't buy it or pay for it. Not because it isn't good, but because it doesn't appeal to them in whatever way that they expect to be appealed to. Whether it's, what's the name of that social media site that was big and then Nobody used it anymore. I'm forgetting the name. MySpace, right? So MySpace still worked, right? You were still able to network socially on it. But because Facebook came onto the scene and provided it in a different way, people jumped over, right? And so you need to understand what your market is, what your market wants, and how to appeal to that. And investors will look for that. They will look for you gearing your product and gearing your marketing and your sales strategy to the specific users, the specific customers that you're looking to onboard and to make money from. So at seed stage, people are looking a lot more for product market fit, problem solution fit. They're looking at the idea, the business model, the revenue model. Now, even at that point, they're considering traction, definitely, but traction still isn't the most important part of the cocktail, right? There's a company recently called Nestcoin that raised around $7 million at pre-seed, right? And they'd only been around for about 4 or 5 months, right? They launched 5 months, and 5 months into their business, they're raising $7 million at pre-seed, which is, I mean, 2 years ago, this would be unheard of. Now, it's not because they had ridiculous traction, but because somebody believed in the idea, believed in the team, and believed that it made sense. However, when you then move to post-seed, or either a really late seed stage, or you're getting to Series A, then it's really all about traction. Then it's because it's unfathomable that you even get to that point without having a solid business. So if you're looking to raise at Series A, then you need to have the traction to show for it. What is your revenue? How many users or customers do you have? How many partnerships have you been able to close, and so on and so forth. That's when that aspect of your business becomes a lot more important, right? So yeah, I think having this sort of more holistic perspective on the investment landscape and getting all your ducks in a row in all the different aspects. Again, so first you need your foundation, so that's your numbers, your processes, your policies, your bookkeeping. Then you want to have the extra things, right? You want to have your traction, you want to have your problem solution fit, product market fit, you want to have the right team, and so on and so forth to be able to get the investment. Because getting sort of that first call with a VC is, I wouldn't say it's easy, but again, you're still at the starting line. You still need to be able to sell your business in a way that speaks to that particular investor's sensibilities. Again, whether it's impact, whether it's pure traction, whether it's the industry that you play in, because now there's a lot of VCs that also only work in specific verticals. I mean, even with Katapult, we only invest in high growth, high impact startups that are within the food tech, climate tech, or agri-tech space, right? Now, of course, that's still a big bucket, and there's a lot of ancillary industries that will play into that. But again, you need to know who you're courting. You need to start building out your Rolodex, or your personal CRM of investors. You need to have a good understanding of how much money is going into the specific industry that you're working in, how much is going into, maybe if you have, and sometimes it feels almost disingenuous to sort of take advantage of things like having a female founder on the team. But when we live in a world where you have to milk that, you have to take advantage of that. There's a lot of funds that are investing in female founders. Search them out. The Google Black Founders Fund just launched, and I'm assuming that all of you, if not 99% of you, are Black, right? So that's another thing that you should take advantage of. And so there's all these different things that can increase your chances of raising investment. You need to almost put them all together to have the most souped up, most attractive version of your business. Yes, so I hope this has sort of proved to be a bit insightful. I think at this point, I'm going to sort of get into the question and answer bit, so I can be a bit more targeted about some of the information that I share.
Okay. Thank you very much, Felix. So at this point, the session is open for questions, and Felix is available to answer, right? So if you have questions that you would like to ask Felix, please just indicate, and Felix, I'm pretty sure Felix will be able to answer them. And we have some questions collated questions from founders. We dipped into the startup ecosystem, dipped into different communities, and we were able to collate a number of questions that Felix would help us in answering. But at this point, I think we have a participant who would like to ask a question. Eze Chimela Veronica.
Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Eze Chimela Veronica. I found Mela Veterinary Services. So, Mr. Felix, please, I want to know, how do you get the right team? Because I saw you made emphasis on getting the right team, which comes first before others, once you want to go into the mind of a venture capitalist. So I wanted to know, what does the right team comprise of?
Well, I mean, it's a very layered question, and I don't know if I can give you the answer. It's not an exact science, right? But ultimately, one, it's expertise, right? Industry domain expertise. So if we're starting an agri-tech company, there better damn well be somebody on the team that has some sort of agri background, has worked in the agri space, if not all team members, right? And that's one. So then there's industry or domain specific expertise. The second is covering all the other bases of expertise, right? So you definitely need somebody that has some sort of finance background or experience, because every business is ultimately about money. If you're building a tech business, which again, most businesses are, you need somebody with a strong technology background. And then depending on the kind of business that you're running, maybe you need somebody with a strong marketing background or a strong sales background. But you need to identify what those core competencies are in the kind of business that you're trying to run. And you need to have a team that covers all those bases. That's one. The second, which I would say is ultimately just as important, is passion. Now, passion isn't something, and I think it's actually great that we're being hosted by Passion Incubator, but passion is something that it's not really tangible, it's not really measurable, but it's supremely impactful on whether or not your business is going to succeed. And I think passion only comes through, let's say, from the perspective of an investor. When they're speaking to you, it will come through in how enthusiastic you are when you speak about the problem. Sometimes, people go off on tangents talking about a specific aspect of the problem or the work that they've done, and that shows that they're really passionate about it. But for you as a founder, trying to find somebody or trying to put together a passionate team, there's no real science to that. I think that one you need to have the EQ to determine whether or not the person you're speaking to is really passionate about the work that you're trying to do, is going to put in the time and effort. Because a lot of entrepreneurs, they think, we're going to make this business and we're going to hit in 2 years, we're going to be balling. It's not like that. It's not like that. It's years and years and years of hard work, blood, sweat, and tears. And if you're not willing to put in that, then you shouldn't be there. And so you also need to see that and really have a deep, honest conversation with your co-founders about whether or not they're willing to put in the time and effort to take the business to where it needs to be. So passion is another really, really big one. Lastly, and again, I think just as important, is team dynamics. So this is the team as a whole, right? So there needs to be in the individual core competencies, then there needs to be individual passion and also a sort of general cohesive passion, but ultimately, there also needs to be team cohesion, right? So you can have the 3 or 4 smartest people on the planet as co-founders, and the business could still fail. Why? Because they can't work well together. And so that is something that you really will only be able to tell over time, right? You need to work on the business for time. You need to work with these people over time and see what their work ethic and work styles are. How does that relate to yours? And especially if you're the CEO or you're the leader, you need to be able to identify this pretty quickly in your team. You need to be able to see who is, carrying their weight, who's putting in the effort, who isn't, what people's specific work styles are. Some people work at night, like I'm a techie, so working at night is actually more my speed than waking up early and trying to orient myself. Some people don't, right? And you need to be able to identify as quickly as possible whether or not someone is a right fit. And if they're not, then you need to act quickly. You need to either have a frank conversation with this person about what it is that you've noticed and try and find solutions. But if there is no solution, then it's better to rip the Band-Aid off early. This is why in founders agreements, you should be putting in, like equity should be vesting. It's not from the beginning that everybody has whatever. If it's 4 founders, we all have about 25% at the beginning. The shares can be held in trust until everybody has put in the 2 years or 3 years that we think is necessary for all your equity to vest. That's been a long-winded answer, but I think that there's those 3 aspects, from competency to passion to team dynamics. Those are the 3 things that I think are most important when putting together your team.
Okay, thank you very much, Felix. So we have a host of questions, but before we go into them, I think Chijoke Akuma, he's raising up his hand, then we go straight to Bright. Hi, Chijoke. You can unmute and ask your question.
Good day, everyone. My name is Chijoke Akuma, Project Director, Hakuna Tech Limited. I'm reaching you guys from Port Harcourt. My company, we are into solar renewables. We were funded by Tony Elumelu Foundation at the first time, and we continue to grow. At this point, we get to a point that we need more funding because we are gradually understanding the rudiments of the business, changing the structures, making it more real. But now, my question is, how do we have access to funding? What I mean by funding, like, is there linkage that we can meet with those who can actually give us access to tell them what we do so that they can give us more funding to be able to improve on what we already have?
I'm not sure I get your question. If you could summarize that again for me.
Okay. My question is, how do we get to meet investors, as in linkage to investors? Are there linkages, as in the platform where we can meet investors, then be able to pitch what we have, give data of what we already have so that they can invest in our company? Because as I said earlier, to a reasonable extent, we figured out some primary part of our company. So, and we have option like to make good profits now, but we are being limited by fund at the moment. So can you give us linkages to meet investors?
Okay, so yes, there's, or rather, where to go to find investors is actually a good question. So there's a number of ways to go about this, right? One is direct outreach, right? So I know this exists for Ghana, where I currently am. I don't know if, I'm sure there should be a similar version of it in Nigeria and in other countries in Africa. It's an investment guide. So Make It in Africa, which is a project sponsored by the German government, undertook some research to basically identify all the investors in, for instance, in Ghana, and put that in a nice long PDF, and it gives contact information and everything. So the first is just knowing which investors are out there and directly reaching out, saying, "Hey, my name is Chijioke. I'm working on this project or on this business, and this is our deck, these are our financials, and we're looking for investment, and we'd love to have a conversation." Of course, a lot of people will come back and say, "Hey, no, sorry, we're not interested." Some might not even reply to you, but you reach out to enough investors, and somebody will eventually take a call with you. So that's sort of one of the first ways. That's like just direct outreach. The second is going to events and conferences and the likes where you know that these people will be, and then networking. A lot of really big deals have come out of people just talking at an event, and things coming out of that. So the second thing I would say is put yourself in the spaces where you know that the people you're looking for will be. Take the time out to really, learn your elevator pitch, your 30-second pitch. "Hi, my name is this. This is what I do. This is what we're working on. This is why it's exciting." I myself, in 2017, when I first moved back to Ghana, and I moved back for a job with the German Chamber of Foreign Commerce as a renewable energy expert. I had my engineering degree, so I thought, hey, this is what I wanted to do. I kind of left the entrepreneurship spirit a bit behind. But after 3 days, believe me, 3 days, I quit that job because it did not fit. And I had to more or less figure out, well, heck, what am I doing with my life? And entrepreneurship seemed like the thing I wanted to do again. And so what I did was I signed up for a bunch of conferences, and I just started talking to people. And at the time I had just an idea, honestly, just an idea, which started developing over time, which was to create biodegradable plastic from industrial hemp. And just that, rehearse, and honestly, I would advise you to rehearse it, write it down like a little script and rehearse it. And that got me in so many different doors. And ultimately, the business itself did not go anywhere. Industrial hemp is still a heavily regulated plant, and so there's not much that could have been done there. But the connections that I got from that, the wealth that my network took on was tremendous. And it's just because I put myself in those spaces, I had my shtick, and I stuck to it. So that's the second thing that I would say is, have your elevator pitch, go to the spaces and sell yourself. Third one I would say is, this is not for everyone, but can also be very beneficial, is looking at transaction advisory, which is actually something that I do myself as well. Transaction advisory is a complicated word for saying that there's people who help you fundraise, right? So for instance, for myself, if you're a company that's looking to raise, we have a conversation about, how much you're trying to raise, at what valuation, what are your metrics, your numbers, so on and so forth. And then I go out, given my network, I then go out and find potential investors that might be interested and sort of facilitate that connection or conversation. Usually, folks like myself will take either a small commission from the fund, or they'll take something called a carry, where we rather try and get money back from the VC at your next liquidity event. So if I help you fundraise now, let's say next year when you're then raising your seed or you're raising your Series A, then I have my small percentage in there. Ultimately, that can work really well. I think it's not been a very popular route for people, but I think in the last couple years, people are seeing the value of it, and they're willing to sort of pay that small premium to be able to be exposed to a much larger network of investors. So again, a long-winded answer, but those are the three ways that I think you can find investors.
Hi, thanks a lot, Felix. Chijioke, it's Abiodun. I don't know if you were here already when I introduced myself, but I will just quickly do that again for the sake of everyone just joining. I head tech ecosystem and venture sourcing for FCMB. Again, I'd just like to say that FCMB is not just a bank. We are a group of companies, and we are very open to partnerships, investment, acquisition, and any other way that you may propose for us to work together. So I would just say that you're already in the right place. You've brought your idea to the right place. Like Felix said, we need to go to certain places and be heard, essentially. So if you wouldn't mind, towards the end of this meeting, I'll drop my details. You can shoot me an email with your idea, and let's see how it goes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. So before we actually go into the next set of questions, we are short for time. So we would, I kind of like plead with everyone to kind of like go straight to the point of your question so that we allow others ask their questions and we allow Felix answer them as swiftly as possible. So next we would have Bright Oduonye. I'm so sorry if I didn't get that correctly, but he would like to ask Felix a question. Over to you, Bright.
All right, thank you very much. So hello, Felix. My name is Bright. I am the co-founder of Udo, an online platform that's working like the WordPress of product design. We are basically helping startups to convert their ideas to UI UX designs in minutes. So the question I have to ask is with regards to the market. You made mention, you touched slightly on target audience and target market as well. And my question is, what are VCs actually looking for when it comes to target markets? And what happens when the market is new or there is insufficient data on actual market size?
Okay, thank you for your question. Now, I mean, I don't think there's one thing that VCs are looking for when it comes to target markets. I think it's more about the size of the market and the sort of strength of your offering. So some businesses operate in a much more sort of general space. For instance, like your Paystacks and your Flutterwaves and the sort of these general fintechs, they have a very wide net, right? Almost anyone is a potential customer. Whereas you have some other businesses that focus, very specifically on, rural African rice farmers, right? That's a very specific thing. Now, the question is, how big is that market? How strong is your offering? Like, is your business poised to actually capture that market? 3, are there any major competitors that are doing what you're doing but better? Those are the things that a VC would be looking out for. Now, you have some control over that in the way that you lay out your strategy, your customer acquisition strategy, or go-to-market strategy. That's kind of what the investor is looking for. Like, do you really have a solid strategy that is somewhat already proven, right? So it can't just be, oh, we think that if we did it this way, but rather, we've run a pilot, we've run a beta test, and we've seen these results, and based on these results, we're doing this, which would then allow us to do that, right? Investors don't like wispy, airy, like, oh yeah, just based on our intuition or based on how we feel about the market, this is what we think will happen. There needs to be data, there needs to be something backing that. Now, to your second question about new spaces or where there's no data, that I think very heavily depends on the investor themselves, right? Some investors are sort of frontier investors. They want to go into the spaces that are sort of new and uncharted because they want to be the first movers and they want to be sort of the most exciting guys in the space. Others are a lot more traditional, and we only invest in established businesses that we know will succeed based on how business has been done for hundreds of years. So yeah, there's definitely investors out there that are willing to bet on an unproven market. But again, you need to have all those fundamentals. You need to show a keen understanding of the space. So even if there isn't data, you yourself should have some data, right? At the end of the day, when you're running a business, you need to do market research. If there's no data out there on Statista or wherever it is that most of us entrepreneurs like to look, then you need to go into the market yourself. Get that data. Say I've spoken to 100 rice farmers, and based on that, I can share these insights about the problem, about the industry, about the users or the potential customers. Then you start to give the investors some confidence that you actually know what you're doing, and it's not just a free-for-all. We're just going to throw something at the wall and see if it sticks. So if there's no data, get your own data. Find your own data. Make it meaningful for what you're trying to do.
Thank you very much, Felix. So before we go into more questions from people raising their hands, Silas, I see you. There are a couple of questions in the chat box which I think are interesting, and I think you would love to answer them. So we have here Paul Mba. He says, what valuation methods are mostly used in Nigerian tech ecosystem? So I think that's a very interesting one. Felix, what do you think?
I think the simple answer there is, I don't know, especially when it comes to the Nigerian tech ecosystem. But I would imagine that it's similar to what happens across the continent. Now, valuation, again, is not an exact science. There's still a lot of academic debates about what is really a believable valuation and how you get there. And there's a number of ways of going there, whether it's your earnings ratio, or it's a discounted cash flow analysis, or it's the assets of your business, and you multiply that. I think, to be very honest with you, I think a lot of people in the African tech ecosystem are kind of just winging it and saying, hey, I think based on these few things, my company is worth this. A lot of people will also reverse engineer their valuation. So they're thinking, okay, well, I want to raise this much money, and I only want to give away this much of my company. And so I'm going to put my valuation around this, this mark. And so again, I don't have the data for this, just like we were talking about data and research, but I do believe that a lot of the valuations that we're seeing out there, not the later stage ones, because those ones are then determined by what people have already invested. But I think the earlier stage ones, it's really people thinking, hey, I want to raise $1 million and I only want to give away 10% of my company. So my company has to be worth 10 million for that to make sense for me. And yeah, that's kind of how it goes, which is kind of also why we're seeing, this great reset, especially in the fintech space, where valuations are dropping really rapidly, because it used to be a lot of hot air. It used to be, we were valued this much because people are willing to buy our equity for this much, right? It's almost like Bitcoin. There's no real intrinsic value. It's just because people are willing to pay for it, then it is that valuable. So I think it's a combination of a lot of these things.
Thank you very much, Felix. So I have one very interesting question that came up as a result of what you said, Felix. And this question is from Vusa. He said, you spoke of corporate governance, HR, and company legal having to be in order. As an African founder, I would like to hear from you which jurisdictions are preferable for VCs that one's company be registered in. So what do you think, Felix?
In a word, Delaware. Delaware in the United States of America is sort of where most companies that are trying to raise money from foreign investors will register. The main reason being that Delaware does not have a sales tax and has a number of other, or does not have a number of other taxes. And so you won't be paying many taxes if you're registered in Delaware. Of course, there's other tax havens like Panama and Malta and Switzerland. These probably won't be as relevant to you as an entrepreneur or as a founder. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of companies now that have made a business out of allowing you to register in Delaware. I forget the name of the company. I was actually speaking to a founder from a business that does exactly that. You register with them, and then they help you fill out all the paperwork to register your company in Delaware. I know Stripe, the payments company, also has a program where they allow or they help you register your business in Delaware. So I'd say that seems to be the sort of the mecca of company registration for getting VC funding.
Okay, thank you very much, Felix. So we have a whole host, a couple of more questions actually just coming in, but we are actually short of time. But we will take one more question from those who are raising up their hands and one more question from the chat box. And if you would like to also get your questions answered, we will share a link where you could register your questions, and we would ensure that these questions are answered. So Silas, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Patrick. Hi, Felix. Pleasure to meet you again. At least I'm putting a face to the name now. So this is Silas from Super Capital. We spoke sometime ago. Yeah. So I have a couple of questions around the conversation that is going on and what you said in response to one of the questions. So number one is about accelerators as a way for fundraising, right? And I understand that Katapult is running one accelerator right now that we're interviewing for and all of that. So one of the things I've noticed about accelerators is sometimes they just ghost you. What happens? How do accelerators give feedback to founders to let them know this is what you did wrong, even though they are getting a rejection? Where there is a rejection, this is what you did wrong, this is what you should do better, or else the founders continue to, or the team continue to progress in error and don't know what they did wrong. You know, that's one. Number two, about you as a headhunter, let me put it that way, helping founders to raise for a fee and all of that. I've heard that a couple of times, but we've not really met someone that says, okay, I'm willing to do this. So if you, for example, you are willing to do this for us as a team at Super Capital, is it possible to have that conversation after this call, right? And back to the Delaware conversation, right? For companies that are not yet registered and are currently raising, what is the solution? Maybe when we get to that conversation or to that point where we say, okay, we're going to do this, and we're putting the agreements in front of us, and we are not yet Delaware C incorporated. How do we go about that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Silas. So I'll do it in order. So the first question about receiving feedback. I mean, I think it's a very, very good point, and it's a regrettable situation, but sometimes it's unavoidable. So for instance, I've done a whole lot of hiring, especially in the last couple of years. And you put out a job description, let's say for a software developer, and you get 500 applications. It is virtually impossible to review each application in such detail that you're able to elicit enough information to be able to give high level and useful and valuable feedback to each of those 500 people, even though only one person is going to get the job. And it's a bit of a crappy answer, I know, but it's the reality. Now, I do believe that we should put some more time into providing feedback to the startups, even if it's just a little bit. Hey, we don't think you're too, for instance, we think you're too early stage, or you're not in the right industry, or something like that. I think those, at least categories of rejections, I think should be doable. But yeah, I think it's very operations heavy. It's very operations intensive to be able to do a very, very detailed analysis of each application and then give detailed feedback as to why. And so that's my view on the situation. The second is, yes, Silas, shoot me an email. We can have a chat after this. And to your third question, if you're in a situation where you're about to raise money from a foreign investor, doing the registration in Delaware doesn't take very long, and you will be much better off for it if you do it. And so, I mean, first of all, receiving foreign currency in local accounts is already a nightmare. Secondly, you will lose out on the exchange rates. Thirdly, you might receive a bunch of questions from your bank and from the SEC and so on. And so, yeah, just look at Stripe, look at some of those other companies that are helping people register in Delaware and take advantage of it. I would suggest that you do it if you know that you're serious about raising and you want to raise from foreign investors. Then I'd say go that way. It will go a long way for you.
All right, thank you so much.
All right. So for short of time, we will just take one more question, and we would let Mr. Abiodun do us the honors of closing. So I have one question here that says that, okay, just give me a sec. What are the biggest gaps have you observed in startups looking to raise funding? And this question is by David Owoyemi, and that will be the last question we will take for today.
Okay, so I think every person in the space will have a different take on this. I would say for me, some of the biggest gaps that I've seen are a lack of a nuanced understanding of their own business and of the space that they operate in, right? So what I was talking about earlier about having a unique insight, you know, something that other folks don't really know about the space or don't know about the industry or know about your business. I think that a lot of founders will have, you know, yes, we understand what is the gross merchandise volume of our industry and all that stuff. But to be able to say that, for instance, like with Uber in Ghana, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's a similar situation in Nigeria as well, is that Uber drivers tend to cancel car trips. Right? Because on the flip side, they're not paying Uber their 20% commission. And so every time that Uber processes a card payment, they won't remit it back to the driver because the driver already owes them a lot, right? And so not everybody knows that about the industry, right? Maybe it's not the best example, but for instance, if you were to be building some kind of ride-sharing platform, you were to point to that problem and say that we're building a platform that does away with that issue. That's a unique insight. That's something that, hey, you actually really understand the space that you're working in. Because I've seen, you know, folks that have a background in marine biology trying to, you know, start a fintech, right? And I'm not saying don't, but I'm saying that you need to back it up. You need to have those unique insights. You need to have that nuanced understanding of your space. And that is on the back of metrics and KPIs. And so all of that is to say that I think a lot of companies are not tracking company-specific and industry-specific KPIs. So fine, you'll see their customer acquisition costs, you'll see their customer lifetime values, but there's nothing specific to the actual business that they're running. And so that's, I would say, one of the biggest gaps is like nuanced metrics and KPI tracking.
So thank you very much, Felix. So we are actually short of time, and we do have some pre-collated questions that Felix hasn't answered, right? But we would ensure that everyone gets their questions answered. I shared a link in the chat box, so you could quickly go into that link, put down your questions, and we'll be sure that Felix answers them and get back to you. For short of time, I would like to bring up Mr. Abiodun Lawal, who is the head tech ecosystem and venture sourcing at FCMB. Mr. Lawal, please do us
Thank
the
you so
honors.
much. Thanks a lot, Patrick. And thank you very much, Felix. It's been such a pleasure listening to you again. It's beyond, well, for me, what Felix has shared today is beyond something that is just in the head. Because our work at FCMB, we actually engage with these things day to day, where we're reviewing startup ideas, we're considering some for investment, and some for partnerships, et cetera, et cetera. These things are actually very important, not only when you're raising funds, but it's really good that you have your company in order, you have your books, properly kept, even when you're looking to partner with a company. I've seen cases where a startup has a fantastic idea, wants to partner with a company, and the company is willing to release their API to this startup. But then just a level of due diligence is carried out on the startup, and then we realize that they're literally building on quicksand. And those are real issues that then affect you even beyond just trying to raise funds. Because with such partnerships, with, for example, with a bank or with a legacy institution like a bank, you could really grow very quickly. But when you don't understand structure, and there is the temptation for startups to want to overrate their ideas, and then they just think, oh, my idea is, is the most important thing, or the most brilliant thing in the world. When you don't listen to people who have some experiences on the other side, it may be difficult for you to, when you get to those bridge, you then realize that you have a lot, that you did not do when you had the chance to do it. So again, Felix, thank you very much for coming up and sharing with us. Before we go, it's pertinent that I announce or I, inform us that my boss is also on the call. Again, speaks to our level of dedication. We don't just do these things because we want to just do them. But we have decision makers from the bank, from the business that also join, these conversations, and they're listening in. So Rolayo Akigbe is my boss. She's the head of transaction banking for FCMB. I don't know if she's still here, but I just thought it was really important to introduce her while we wrap up. So that'll be it for today. We'll have another knowledge sharing series around something really interesting. We hope that Felix would also do us the honor to join us sometime soon. It was really good speaking and hearing you speak, and also contributing a little quota to the ecosystem at large. And for the builders, don't forget to send me your decks, your pitch decks, presentation, whatever you have for possible, investment. Some could be partnerships, some could be, an outright acquisition if your idea is so fantastic and you have traction to prove that you can grow. Please share those things with me. I've shared my details, and I look forward to engaging you guys. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you to the team. Thank you, Patrick, Kelvin, and Victoria. Thank you again, Felix. That will be all for today. Thank you, and have a good one. Bye.
Bye, guys. It was a pleasure.